This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Why we're making double extra sure that our microphones are working good right now.
Right, yeah. We checked like 3 times.
Yeah, we double checked last time and it, some reason, still picked up the laptop mic instead of the good mic.
You can't trust what Audacity tells you, is what I've learned, is sometimes even though it says it's picking up the right mic in the drop down, it hasn't actually switched over.
Gotcha.
It's just one of those things where Audacity likes to lie to you. I look at it and I'm like, oh yeah, that's the right mic in the drop down, you've got it. And nope, liar, software on fire. But yeah, I'm excited to sit down and go at it again. We've got a fun little little tower, Salidar chapter, which is super fun.
Yeah, Salidar is such an interesting phase for the Aes Sedai because they're still kind of getting on their feet, the rebel Aes Sedai. So it's interesting to see just how much they cling to their routines.
We're talking about chapter 12, questions and answers. Our symbol is the Flame of Tarvalin. The Flame of Tarvalin just for the White Tower and Aes Sedai, I would assume. Questions and answers. There's a lot of questions and a lot of answers in this chapter. I would hesitate to narrow it down to one.
I think primarily the ones that stand out the most are what are the rebel Aes Sedai planning on doing in regards to Elyda's emissary, because it's been there for 3 days now. And Nyneave gets the answer, but she doesn't actually know the specific question that was posed to the Hall of the Tower in heavy air quotes.
It's like getting the answer of 42. It's like, wait,
right.
Now we need to know the question. But we know the question, of course, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of and then of course we have the questioning of Nyneave by Janya and Delana, where they sit her down and ask her tons of questions and she has to come up with answers.
And, they just kind of drill her for the millionth time, and she's so exacerbated about it because every Aes Sedai has done this, and she's given her story and her account of Rand and the boys 1,000,000 times, and she's just so over it.
And of course, this is so where I talk about conflicting loyalties. You've got Delana, who's, of course, a dark friend, questioning her, and who's brought Halima into the camp. You have... of the Salidar 6, one thing I don't think I realized from the beginning is Beonin, Beonin.
Oh yeah, Beonin.
She's an Aes Sedai, Beonin. She's an Aes Sedai of the Grey Ajah. She's one of the Salidar 6. She was a plant from the beginning. She was Elyda's plant. She always was feeding information back to Elyda. So there's a line in here where Nyneave wonders, how had Elyda discovered Salidar so quickly? The truth is, one of the Salidar 6 is a traitor. I don't think I ever picked up on that until I was researching this chapter.
Beonin is the one that travels back to the White Tower as soon as they find out that Egwene was captured, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And then, Elyda abuses the hell out of her, that's not that one, mixing that one up with the other. But she just hates what Elyda has done with the tower.
Right.
And regrets having given her loyalty to her.
And gives her a bunch of the weaves. Gives her traveling. Gives her just a bunch of the other new weaves, the inverting, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
She doesn't give her everything because she doesn't like what's going on. But yeah, and then Egwene eventually wins her back over, and it's like, listen, even though I'm captured, I'm still your Amyrlin. You have to obey me. You swore to me. But I didn't realize. I thought that she seized on the opportunity of Egwene being captured to jump from a dying ship. I didn't realize she was a traitor from the beginning. And that all this information that goes back to Elyda is actually Beonin sending it back to her.
Yeah, I remember when that part was made clear, it was a shock. It was like, damn, because she becomes a sitter? Does she become a sitter in the rebel camp? Either way, she's pretty influential, whether she takes a seat in the hall or not. She's pretty influential, and I believe she was a pretty heavy advisor for Egwene.
Yeah, I don't think she ever actually becomes a sitter in the hall, but she's one of the Salidar 6 who are basically in control of the hall. As we see them say here, do we trust the hall? Hell no. We get our own puppet and we manipulate her, so we're in control. That's the whole point of having Egwene be Amyrlin, is so that the Salidar 6 can maintain their control.
And they bit off way more than they could.
Yeah, as it turns out, they picked the wrong puppet.
Yeah, if they wanted a biddable child on the Amyrlin seat, they should have kept Elsa Grinwell.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, she's awful. She just wanted to flirt with the boys.
Right. Throw a couple warders at her and she'll do whatever you ask.
Exactly. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. She didn't really have the power. Maybe Nicola. Nicola would have been a decent candidate. She's got the power.
And Nicola's short-sighted enough that she could have been manipulated, whereas
Exactly.
Egwene was not short-sighted.
No, but Egwene fits the profile. She was out of the tower. She's avoided all the politics. She didn't choose a side. This is them. It's very much. You can't raise somebody up that's been a child in the Salidar for a while, right? You've got to pick someone from the outside.
So they can claim some sort of neutrality.
Exactly. And also, so it's not like, hey, this is someone who yesterday we were telling to go wash the dishes and today is, telling us what to do. Or telling other people what to do, at least. We want someone who at least has, some novelty to these Aes Sedai.
I always wonder what would have happened if Swan hadn't been deposed and if the rebellion had started a different way. Had Elaida broken off a group of Aes Sedai that were strongly against what Swan had done and created a rebel faction that way, and it had been Swan against Elaida, I feel like that could have been a very interesting story as well.
Those two personalities could have been, well, I mean, we see them a little bit at odds, but not really. I do think that the way they both behave, which is manipulating things from behind the scenes until Elaida gets corrupted by Fane and becomes crazy, that's very much they're trying to stab each other in the dark, and we just see the result of that, which is Suan getting stabbed. We don't really see a lot of the manipulation because it's all behind the scenes. But that battle kind of does happen, and Elaida kicks her butt.
Only because Swan didn't know what was happening.
Well, yeah, but that's how you play the game.
Fair.
That's how you win the game, is you take them down without them knowing it's coming. She should have known with her spies and come on, where was her spies in the tower and just paying attention to what's going on right beneath her feet. She just completely missed out on it. One of her flaws that she admits is that she wasn't paying enough attention to what was going on right under her nose. She was spending all this time manipulating the world. She kind of ignored Tarvalin.
Whereas Lyanna set up a full-on network of Isoneers in the city.
Yeah, and that definitely helped. She still didn't have enough people paying attention to the tower itself, though.
She didn't have enough spies within the tower itself. She didn't have enough allies amongst the other sisters. And I think that's something that was a big mistake Swan made, was separating herself so much from the other sisters as Amyrlin. She
did tend to tramp all over them.
Mm-hmm.
She pissed off a lot of people. You can only take so many fish analogies before you go, okay, I'm taking you down. one more crack about Silverpike, and you and I are going at it. That's all there is to it.
If you cut a hole in a net, there's actually fewer holes than there were when you started.
God, I hate that. That makes me very angry right now. Because it's true, but it shouldn't be. Because all you're doing by cutting a hole in the net is making the holes bigger. You're combined. It's like when you take a bubble and you combine them.
Mm-hmm.
You have fewer bubbles, but the bubble is bigger.
Yep.
Yeah, you heard that angry sigh. Just some things we've learned from Moghedien. This is where we learned that a tied-off shield is vulnerable, which seems to be extremely relevant for the end of this book in Dumai's Wells.
Yeah.
That this is really, we're talking about foreshadowing here for him being able to break out of...
Is this the first time that we learned that?
The box. Yeah. Because up to this point, we have no idea how Moghedien was left shielded and then disappeared.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we knew somehow she escaped, but we didn't know if it was, she ran out the back when no one was looking, someone else got her, she escaped, what the deal was. And here we find out that she was able to break through the tied-off shield and then get out of there.
I just never remember really questioning that. Even on my first read, I kind of just figured that she found a way to unshield herself after Nyneave tied it off. I didn't necessarily have the specifics of how it was done, but I figured it was either that or one of the other Black Aja sisters had to have come in and freed her. But it just kind of stood to reason to me from the very beginning that there was probably a way to break through a shield.
Sure. But I think it's specifically that it's the tied-off shield that's vulnerable, not necessarily any shield that's vulnerable.
Sure, yeah.
That's the key.
If somebody is holding... Because the thing is, you can hold a shield on somebody who's significantly stronger than you,
mm-hmm.
even if you don't have the shielding talent.
Right. Just that one woman with the shielding talent. I don't remember her name. Does anyone in the chat have it? Who had the stretchy shield? She could shield anybody, of any strength. She didn't need the circle. She's one of the kin. Thank you. So that was, that's a talent of hers. In the same way that Andral had the talent with gateways, is that he's able to make a gateway of any size, even though he's not that powerful.
Does Talon also have that talent? Barrowin. And she's super weak, right?
Yeah, she's super very weak. Yeah.
Not even strong enough to be accepted strength level.
Yep.
Or something ridiculous like that. Yeah, she's super low power level.
Morghese level power level.
Mm-hmm. Well, probably a little stronger than that because she can channel at will.
Sure. Well, fair. Yeah. But when she's able to channel, it's nothing. Probably more Sorelia. I have no idea why I have so much problem with Sorelia's name. It's definitely one of those hard ones to say for me.
Yeah, the audiobooks say Sorelia, and I always read it Sorelia before I picked up the audiobooks. Yeah, Talon is just super strong. She's of a strength level with Nyneave almost.
And so, sure, she can hold almost anybody because she's just that strong, and she's got the strength of the shield. But Bowen has a very thin shield, but because it's stretchy, she can hold someone of incredible power.
But if she tied it off, her shield probably wouldn't stretch. She has to be maintaining it for that.
Agree. Yeah, absolutely. It would shatter like a piece of paper, I think, once she tied it off. Right. However, give her a circle of 13, and I bet she could hold, almost anybody with that. Maybe even someone with a full circle. Maybe she could shield them. That would be interesting.
That would be super interesting to see her with a circle against another bigger circle.
Yeah, it's entirely possible she was the inspiration for Andral, or at least the idea that you can have a weak channeler with a talent is something that's not necessarily unique to her, but she's a great example of it, and maybe the biggest.
Yeah, there are yellow sisters who aren't very high standing, but are rather skilled with healing.
And healing tends to be one of the special cases, it seems to be. A talent in healing is a frequent capital T talent.
Yes. Almost any Aes Sedai can do basic healing, but some of them just have a much greater affinity to it.
I think it involves how much energy it takes from the person who's hurt, how bad of an injury you can heal, all those sorts of things.
It always struck me as weird that Elayne never got better at healing or never actually developed a talent for it. Because when we first meet her, she's got a pouch full of herbs, and she talks about how she's always healing birds and stuff that she finds in the garden or whatever. And that never goes anywhere. We see her again in this part of the book, nursing a songbird in a cage in her and Nynaeve's room, but she never developed any real talent for healing.
I see it more as a caretaker, someone, and as a analogy for her caretaking of nations, and that nursing a sick animal back to health is very much nursing a sick nation back to health.
Yeah, and she can definitely take something that's broken or damaged and nurse it into something for sure.
But I think one of the things it did say is she tried healing on a small bird, and they're too fragile to take it anyway. Yeah. So the healing doesn't work on the small animals, and at least not the general field healing that our modern Aes Sedai use.
Right.
But yeah, no, I would like to see Elayne having learned more with healing. But it turns out that not everyone can be good at everything. And it's Elayne, she's able to create ter'angreal. She's
and she's goddamn good with weather too.
Yeah, goddamn good with weather. She's actually a pretty decent battle mage. Don't fuck with her lightning or fire magic, right?
I definitely think Egwene has her beat as far as being a good battle mage, but
totally.
She can hold her own for sure. She's also really talented with illusion.
Yeah? What's the example there?
Well, several. They do lots of disguising themselves. She does a lot of disguising themselves when they get to Abu Dar to sneak past the boys.
The Mask of Mirrors, yeah.
The Mask of Mirrors. She uses it when she pretends to be one of the Forsaken to question the Black Aja in her dungeon.
Right. Yeah, and she uses it during battle frequently, I think, to just appear as...
Yeah, and she, creates the lion banner out of light above herself at one point.
That's right.
To rally the troops in the last battle.
Nice. Good calls.
She's really good with illusion magic.
Fire and air, which is also what makes lightning. So yeah, I can see that she's And lightning tends to be, I think, the tool that she uses when she calls down, as opposed to Egwene, who's much more of an earth. She tends to use exploding earth.
Yeah, but also Egwene shooting lightning from her fucking fingertips at the Rockin outside the hole in the tower.
Well, isn't it from the ter'angreal?
No, I mean, she's got a sa'angreal, but she's still just shooting lightning out of her fingers.
It's fucking great.
God, Egwene's a beast.
Sith Alvier.
Yeah.
This attack on the White Tower has left me deformed and scarred.
Scarred and broken.
That is such an epic battle. And anyway, back to the chapter.
We have not talked about this chapter at all.
Well, because it's a lot of, we're encountering these Aes Sedai, and there's more sort of backstory and stuff. Elayne heads off with Moghedien's bracelet, leaving Nyneave there. And there's a bit of a confrontation between Nyneave and Moghedien, where Moghedien sort of, because Nyneave can't control her with her mind, essentially, she kind of gets a little brave and throws a few things in Nynaeve's face. You have to wonder how much frustration was coming out of Moghedien at this point.
Oh yeah, she's totally unloading some of her pent-up anger. And doing it in a subtle way, like she's not screaming or shouting or being threatening, she's just really fucking with Nynaeve's head.
Yeah, totally. And we see that for the rest of the chapter, that Nynaeve's head is thoroughly fucked with.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, Moghedien definitely got under her skin. But that's what Moghedien does. She just plants these little seeds and then disappears.
Even with all her distrust, she'd believed the woman cowed. False. Oh, light, false. She had been sure Moghedien knew almost as little about Elayne and Rand as the Aes Sedai did. False. And for her to suggest going to him, they had talked too freely in front of her. What else had they let slip, and what use could Moghedien make of it? You made some mistakes, because they've been treating her like a servant, not like one of the Forsaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were much too comfortable and complacent with having her as a captured Damani.
Definitely. And without breaking her like a Damani.
Yeah, exactly.
Part of me always wonders, why didn't Moghedien go up to one of the Black Ajah sisters and just order them to remove the collar?
I don't think that Moghedien ever got really close to any of the Black Sisters. Also, I think that's a good point as well, Aradia. It would have required a certain amount of bravery. It also would have required a certain amount of humility that she has a very hard time mustering.
And also the risk of the Black Sister being like, oh, so this collar controls you, does it? I'm going to go take the bracelet away. And putting two and two together, seeing the bracelet, realizing the bracelet controls the collar, going to get that.
A much more cunning Black Sister with her bracelet could, cause some problems.
Can you imagine like a Black Sister just throwing Moghedien at somebody, just throwing them at the Amerlin seat to kill her or something, or throwing her at the White Tower to sort of...
A Black Sister with that bracelet and with Moghedien as captive, willing to absolutely torture her because, the Black Ajah is relentless, and use her knowledge of darker magics like compulsion. Could you imagine if some of the Black Ajah had Moghedien's knowledge of compulsion?
Can you just Liandrin?
Yeah. I wonder if Liandrin could learn it, because Liandrin has her own version of compulsion. I wonder how because like learning a weave that does something that she already knows how to do in a completely different way is very difficult. So I wonder if Liandrin would ever actually be good at real compulsion. That's
a good question. I think it's enough different that it would be like learning a totally new weave, because Maybe. It is sort of like the way, the healing they do is totally different from the battlefield healing.
Yeah, I don't really want to find out either. I mean, I would love to know the answer to the question, but I'm not willing to experiment to find out.
Well, you don't want to hang around Liandrin or Phalion or Moghedien or any of those other? Just let them play with your head for a while?
Yeah, no, hard pass.
No. Okay. Well, now what I'm going to get you for your birthday. Fuck.
I can send you one of my wish lists on Amazon. Also, my birthday is not till March. You have time. In the very beginning of the chapter, it's not super relevant to anything, but we see the Salidar 6 are holed up in the little tower, presumably with Tarna at this point, and the building is warded against eavesdropping, and we get the line, but enough to see that a bit of the ward against eavesdropping that enclosed the inn, it was The sort that stopped anyone who was trying to listen with the power, the price of sharing knowledge. So another thing that we see for the first time in this chapter is the warding against eavesdropping being used collectively by the Aes Sedai. And that always struck me as odd, because for some reason I felt like Aes Sedai were able to block eavesdropping before this, but apparently not. Apparently, like, Moghedien is the source of that ward.
Right. Well, and I think because we hear about Moraine's trick with the stone is something that not everybody knows about. It's one of those things that a lot of Aes Sedai probably know how to eavesdrop, but don't really talk about it. You know, there's a couple of lines where, like, some of these Aes Sedai pick up the tricks awful quick. It's like, wait a minute, did you already know how to do that? And that's what I'm thinking is going on here, that a lot of these Aes Sedai already knew how to use that.
Well, and we know that like the three most common like wilder talents are healing, some form of compulsion, and eavesdropping.
I'm assuming, yeah. I don't know how frequent healing is, but it's definitely one of those talents, yeah.
I think that there's a scene somewhere. Aradia can probably point you to it better than I could, but when they're talking about wilders, and those are the three most common things that wilders have, because generally wilders are wisdoms or in training to be wisdoms, or it's one of the things that people need badly enough to reach out to the one power for is some sort of healing.
I do think it's less common than the other two, though.
Probably.
Simply because, like, it's dangerous. Like, you can kill somebody pretty easily with the healing. And Nynaeve's complicated healing is kind of crazy. Yeah. Baron reflects on it when compelling Aes Sedai prisoners with the ideal after the Dumai's Wells. Well, she mentions the two. Does she mention healing as a third? I don't remember. That's what I don't. Baron is talking about how overhearing people and like light compulsion, because she's talking about assembling compulsion out of all the little bits that people have. Yeah. And so I think that the healing is most likely similar, in that like the people who learn a little bit healing might just be like, oh, they can heal a scratch or something like that.
I could totally be wrong about the healing. It could be one of those things where I'm just like, well, Nyneave is a healer, and there's probably a ton of other wilders out there that are wisdoms or readers or wise women or whatever who have some one power healing stuff.
I mean, certainly Moraine suggests that the healing talent is, implies that she can channel. So I think, the reverse is true. I'm not sure about going how frequent it is, just that like it's frequent enough that like, oh yeah, people who suddenly miraculously get better around channelers or around people when they should have died are most likely, being healed by a channeler. Again, we are not staying on topic with this chapter, but that's what this chapter is. It's definitely touching up.
Before we try to get back on topic again, I think another one that would also be safe to assume is a talent that wilders tend to pick up is some sort of affinity with weather. If not actual weather control, I'm sure we do see a lot of them develop the talent to listen to the winds.
Well, and I've always thought of that as more of a talent about sensing trouble. And it's just that if you're in a farm, storms are trouble. So you tend to sense those more than anything else. And once Nyneave left, at least Nynaeve's talent was for trouble. And then once she left the Two Rivers, the trouble was more generic and less storm. It was more armies and politics and, wars.
Oh, yeah. So the article that was just linked, Metal Datura, even those wilders who learn how to manage their abilities tend to do so at a price. They almost invariably have some sort of block against using the one power effectively, and without training, they are usually limited to one or two talents they have discovered on their own. Most commonly, these women have learned how to listen in on the conversations of others through a long-distance form of eavesdropping, or they have learned how to get what they want through some type of compulsion. Some, however, learn to heal or predict the weather, or a number of other specialized skills depending on their everyday occupation. So yeah, it looks like eavesdropping and compulsion are the two most common, and then there's a smattering of healing and weather prediction, and, maybe somebody can cut an absolutely perfect bolt of cloth if they're a weaver and learn how to channel by accident or something. Who knows?
Totally agree. I think there's a couple other little talents, but things that are both easy enough to discover on your own and simple enough to want in everyday life are pretty infrequent.
Yeah, I imagine like if a farm wife or something learns how to travel channel without realizing what she's doing, maybe she could have the talent of making plants grow for her little herb
Or any farmer,
her little herb garden or something. Yeah,
Although we don't really see, I guess we do see Elida use that talent on flowers.
we see Elida use it, and we know that it's something that Aes Sedai can do. I doubt Elida is the only Aes Sedai who uses it, but it's one of the what's her face? Cadzoane talks about it with her roses, trying to develop roses that don't have a bunch of evil thorns on them without using channeling to coax their growth is definitely a thing that Cadzoane talks about. So using the one power to grow plants is definitely a thing that happens.
And Metal Deter makes a good point that, you tend to discover these tricks about the same age that you tend to discover you can channel, which tends to be around 15 to 20. And so there's probably not a lot of people out there like trying to figure out tricks on how to like not be constipated. Like I don't know what are something that older people would be more obsessed about. Keeping a house stead or something like that. Teenagers are more likely to find a trick to make their car go fast, or horse and buggy in this case. Look at Bella, right? Like essentially, no, I like the idea of like look at Randall Thor. What he wanted to do was get a faster car, right? So he supercharged Bella.
Uh-huh.
It's like, what do teenage boys want? It's not a faster horse, right?
I definitely enjoy driving my Mustang.
We're both carless right now, and that feels bad sometimes.
Normally only when grocery shopping.
Yeah. Occasionally when it's like, hey, I want to go to the beach this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the one thing that like, hey, we need to know somebody with a car.
But like a local rental isn't that expensive if you're only going to keep it for a day or two. That's like, $50 to $100 versus like having a car for a week, which is like $400.
Sure. Anyway, I need to plan a trip. This all it means I need to plan a trip to the beach where I don't talk to anybody or see anybody, but I missed the Oregon coast and I need to see it one more time before winter sets in.
Dude, that would be nice. I have not been to the Oregon coast as long as I've lived here now. There's so much frustration in this chapter. Like, we see Elayne just irritated as hell with the novices. Like, she was excited to be teaching her first novice class, and now she's just fed up with them. She's irritated with the young ones being young and dumb and not listening, and she's irritated with the older ones being snippy and talking back and balking at her because they're older than her, and a million other things. And then you see Nynaeve's frustration with Delana and the other sitter, Jonya, with like write slow for one and write fast for the other, and be neat for one but get everything for the other. And
I think he's really setting up their fleeing to find the Ball of the Winds and to get the hell out of Salidar. Like, they are very frustrated with being there. They have gone adventuring and now their freedoms have been curtailed.
Yeah.
And they have responsibilities and they have to deal with other people's opinions, and they can't just, tramp all over the people around them and make up their minds and just go for it. Now they have to acknowledge that other people may have more power than them. And it's hard. It's grating to go back. It's like moving out and then like having to go back and live with your parents. Like, that's hard.
That's exactly what this is like.
This is exactly what this feels like, is like Nyneave and Elayne moving back in with mom, and it's not going well. It's not going well at all. And the whole place is on fire because Tarna is there.
Mm-hmm.
We learn that basically the message to her is we need more time, which is bullshit because they're delaying until they can get a hold of Egwene and get her there and make her Amyrlin.
Exactly.
Because I've talked a lot about how in the previous chapters they've made their decision already. Like, we've got signs that they are looking for Elayne, and there's a lot of hints in here where they're talking about that the child, and that's of course all Egwene.
Yeah, looking for Egwene. You said Elayne.
I did say Elayne.
Elayne and Egwene are very easy names to mix up with each other when you're not, especially because they're such good friends anyways. I don't know. It's one of those things. It happens a lot. You're not the only one.
When like Avienda hangs out with Elayne and Egwene a lot, but like she hangs out with one and then the other, and it's like, oh, which one she's hanging out with right now? Yeah, okay. Rand is in love with one and then the other. Like,
I love all the rumors that we're getting as well, like the rumors about the White Cloak Army and everything, the weirdness that's going on. Just how much rumor is a thing that Jordan uses. The way that stories travel over distance and time is a big theme in all of these books, and you see some of it here.
And all these rumors are just so wrong. Elida's dead. Like,
The Red's coming to summon Shiriam.
Right, right. And I like the one guy who's like, I say Eliza fine, Amerlin. Is Tamarna here? Great, Amerlin. Reminds me of people being like, I welcome our new robot overlords. You know, like, I welcome our new red Amerlin, because he thinks they're going to lose. Points out to Nyneave what everyone's thinking, which is that there are spies here for Elida. And he's sort of saying that out loud, so the spies identify him as a sympathizer. It's a little bit of a backhanded way of going about it. But and as we talked about in the beginning of the chapter, the spy is Beowyn. She's at least one of them. Probably the most important. And then Nicola shows up.
While she's talking to Brigida, again, going off of that frustration and going off of Moghedien getting into her head, talking to Brigida about setting up a plan to get the fuck out of there.
Right. And then she's had, again, we talked about her frustration, but things like these two kids who are getting better and could, you know, suddenly tell the truth that she isn't a promise out of them, that this woman isn't their mother. You know, there's all these sort of little pitfalls that she's realizing she's set up, and that she's really lucky she hasn't fallen into and gotten caught. Like, she's realizing that she has built her position in Salidar on a house of cards, and it's time to get the hell out of there. And frankly, if it wasn't for the miraculous choosing of Egwene as Amerlin and her ability to forgive them the things they do and raise them to Aes Sedai, they would have been screwed. Like, something would have fallen out from underneath them.
Oh yeah, it was only a matter of time until things began to catch up.
And we do find out, you know, I think we speculated earlier that maybe Maragon did something, or Moghedien did something to the two boys, and it seems that they're recovering just fine. So it seems they were just traumatized by the war and nothing else, as far as we can tell.
And was Moghedien posing as their mother or caretaker before that was the disguise?
Yes, that's how she snuck onto the boat with them.
So I would imagine that she did a little bit of compulsion on these kids at least. She's definitely not above it.
She's definitely not above it, and that's something that we speculated a lot at the time. And it's something I've been looking for, and as far as I can tell, she just grabbed two kids that were completely she grabbed them because they were already traumatized and just didn't bother doing anything to them. It was just like, oh, here's two kids. And I honestly don't think she intended, obviously she didn't intend to have them for that long. She didn't intend to still be their quote-unquote mother, you know. She clearly intended to disappear into Salidar.
Yeah, I guess she's much more trusting of children keeping their mouth shut than I am, because I don't know very many small children who'd be like, these are my children, you're not my mom.
Right, well, they were traumatized to be silent before Moghedien was captured, and it's not like she can compel them afterwards without somebody figuring it out. So,
well, she knows how to invert her weaves.
Well, but she's collared. She couldn't channel.
Yeah, I mean, unless she compelled them. I was still thinking along the lines of having compelled them while she was still on the ship before she was captured, or before getting on the ship and posing as their caretaker.
Entirely possible, but it's, you know, she claims that she didn't. And
because she's so trustworthy.
Yeah, I know. This is one of those can you channel until I run Riyadh debates. We've never found a definitive answer one way or the other, and only the lack of evidence leads me to believe that. And if they were compelled, I don't think they would be recovering. That's all I'm saying. That's my argument against that.
Gotcha. Yeah, which, you know, I would say a little bit of light compulsion just to, you know, make them perceive her as the mother figure in their life wouldn't necessarily be enough to completely shatter their minds. Like, it's not Grendel level compulsion.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. A whiskey in their tea, wine in their bottle, sort of a thing.
Yeah, whiskey in the jarro. Sure, I'm down with that. I mean, like, you know, I'm not ruling it out. This is one of those things where pick your head canon.
Right.
It's probably acceptable.
This is my hill. I'll die on it.
We get a little interaction between Nyneave, Ariana, and Brigida, where Brigida is totally making Nyneave jealous, and Nyneave is like, no, you're not. You're the jealous one. Projecting much. And then one of my favorite lines where Brigida's talking about Uno, and he's like, come on, he's a nice, well set up fellow.
What a well set up.
And Nyneave's like, what?
With that eye patch? God, it makes my stomach turn. You know what, though? Like, honestly, sometimes the men who are... I'm just going to go off on a little gay rant here. Sometimes it's the men who aren't conventionally pretty that Brigida has, like, this thing for that are honestly some of the sexiest dudes. Like, I'm not going to lie. I've met some really ugly looking guys who were just ridiculously appealing despite the fact that they look like Mack trucks.
So it's my theory on that is people who are conventionally attractive are always kind of considered average, and people who kind of fall on the extremes of that, you find them to either be extremely unattractive or extremely attractive. And it's because they are outside of the norm that you tend to find them one or the other. And as they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. As Zarady says, unique is on fire, right? Like, or lit. Is that what that emoji is? Yeah.
I mean, that's right. Unique is fire. You could just say unique is fire. Unique is
whatever the kids say these days.
Goddamn youngsters.
You're one of the kids, right, Travis?
I mean, I'm 25. Am I?
I'm going to go with yes.
Okay.
Unique attractiveness is certainly better. And I think that's where Brigida falls down on, is like, dudes who look interesting are, and you know, she's been alive so long. She has memories of so many, you know, normal, attractive, generic looking people is probably like boring as fuck. Not to mention, of course, she's in love with an ugly dude, right? That's always her standard is Geidel.
Mm-hmm.
Game. And like, that's a certain level of attractiveness, shall we say?
It's a certain type of appeal, I think, is how I would word it.
More like rough and cut and you know, a Lan type attractiveness. You know, I think Brigida would be extremely into Lan.
Probably. Yeah, the way he's described in the book rather than the way that he's been casted. He's definitely been casted way prettier than he's described.
We'll see how he ends up in the show. You can, you know, just because the actor's nice and pretty doesn't mean a little.
You can do a lot
black
with
and
makeup. Yeah,
you can do a lot with makeup and dirt
mm-hmm.
and armor.
I'd have no doubts that they can rough up Daniel Haney.
I have no doubts you would rough up Daniel Haney.
I'd have no doubts that I would let Daniel Haney rough me up.
Anyway. Brigida questions Nynaeve's authority and is like, I want Elayne to tell me that we shouldn't bring Unknown along because I think we should Unknown along, and you're not going to tell me? I'm going to make my Aes Sedai tell me?
And she's my Aes Sedai, and I don't have to listen to you.
Exactly. And then so basically this conversation goes on for a while, and I don't really have anything to say about that until Nicola shows up.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much there. It's just the debate of should we go or should we not, and should we take Uno or should we not, until Nicola shows up. I do like Irena's, like, snide comment. Like, Irena's so bitter about being lied to about whether they were Aes Sedai or not.
As she legitimately should be.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a shitty thing of them to do. That was one. I mean, I understood why they had to do it, but like,
I also doubt they ever apologized to Irena.
Right. There is that sort of like, hey, listen, we did this thing because we felt we had to, and we're really sorry. And yeah, again, Nynaeve is just like, no, accept it. Gosh. And like, only with Brigida being like, listen, I know they're jerks. Can you just keep this to yourself for me? That's the only thing that kept it going. So once again, Brigida is the peacekeeper there, which she does a lot of.
She does a lot. She saves Elayne's bacon so many times in so many different ways.
What do you mean? Min's viewing ensures that she'll always be safe until her babies are born.
Yeah. I love how we get, like, in that last moment, we get that realization that maybe her babies will be born safe, but that doesn't mean that Elayne will be safe. And, like, she finally realizes that.
It also doesn't mean that they'll be safe 3 minutes after they're born.
Right.
It doesn't mean someone can't take them away and raise them, you know, as one of a dreadlord or something like that. So anyway, moving on from Elayne being frustrating. This is Nicola getting a little bit of revenge, being like, so yeah, I got this message that said you needed to be there in 15 minutes, about 20 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it takes her a little while to figure that one out, but that's definitely Nicola getting a little revenge for her. And Nicola's a tragic story, because Nicola is what Egwene honestly should have been. Because Nicola is incredibly powerful. She's like nearly Nynaeve level powerful.
Yeah, I think she's slightly under Elayne and Egwene.
Okay.
So she's not quite Nynaeve level. She's not even quite Elayne level, but she's close enough. She's still significantly stronger than Moiraine or Swan or that upper echelon of Aes Sedai, but not quite as strong as the three Supergirls.
She's like would have been the strongest thing before the Supergirl.
She's like Cadzowain level.
So she's a little bitter about that, just a little bit. But she jumps ahead too far. She tries too hard, and essentially she puts herself in too many dangerous situations and ends up dying in the last battle with doing absolutely no good whatsoever. And it's, yeah, she didn't have the plot armor. And so that's kind of, in a lot of ways, I think of Nicola as kind of like what would have happened to Egwene without a lot of people helping her out and without the plot armor. And like the number of times that our heroes like jump in to tell Riyadh and should have just been killed immediately by some Forsaken who saw them there and just like crush your mind or whatever. That kind of should have happened a couple of times. And it does with Nicola. And so I appreciate her for that reason. But she's also like, Nicola is one of those, she's constantly running by the edge and you just keep waiting for her to fall. And eventually she does.
Especially because she's just warned so many times and she doesn't listen to any of those warnings ever.
And just like all of our heroes, but, you know, she suffers the consequences.
I don't know. I do feel like with some of the heroes, that daringness and that pushing the envelope kind of stuff is a little bit more justified because they have these connections to the bigger things that are going on. Whereas Nicola's whole thing is just selfishly competitive.
True.
So the motive, not just plot armor, but motive is what makes it palatable versus unpalatable.
That because she has a selfish motivation for trying to push herself further. Right. Whereas our heroes are thrust into a situation where they're forced forward.
Mm-hmm. And like they're constantly pushing the edge and doing things that are risky and dangerous, i.e. Egwene not listening to the wise ones and going into the dream world anyway is probably prolonging her recovery time. Or Elayne doing the dumb shit with Terangrial that most Aes Sedai would never do, or whatever other dangerous situations you can imagine that these people have put themselves in. They're generally doing it to advance the cause of the side of the light and to advance, you know, Egwene does a lot of the things that she does to try to help Rand and to try to help whatever she can do. Whereas Nicola, it's always just like, let me use my power and my innate talents and my ability with foretelling to just further my own ends constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And her own ends are just like wanting more freedom and wanting more clout. It's all about clout for her.
I have to wonder that if she would have been eventually recruited as a Dark Friend. I don't know. She's one of those characters where I want to hate her so much.
Nicola's not evil. She's just she's very ambitious. Yeah, she definitely would have been a Slytherin if this were Hogwarts.
Right, and that's where like, oh man, does that mean that she could have been on the dark side, or is she just like, you know, you're not a Dark Friend, you just, you know, hang out in the same room as the Dark Friends. Yeah, you know, you just happen to have the same personality traits as a Dark Friend. You're just not quite as evil.
Yeah. No, Nicola's one of those people who I really wanted to be able to like. I wanted her to be a good person, and she just kind of wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
She never really matured.
No, I mean, like, she runs away to the White Tower, and just because they're not letting her learn fast enough, and she, like, goes to the White Tower as a traitor because she thinks they're going to let her learn faster. Which, first of all, they're not.
Because they're treating her like literally every other novice. Like, oh no. But I mean, again, she has this ridiculous amount of talent. She has the foretelling. She can see ta'veren. She has so much raw potential as far as her strength goes and her ability to weave goes. And she sees Elayne and Nyneave and Egwene, who have been in the tower for like a year at this point, if that, like already raised to accepted and having gone off into the real world and sent off on missions by the Amerlin seat, and then sees them get raised to Aes Sedai in the most unorthodox way. And like, I can understand why she feels a certain level of entitlement because she's almost as powerful and equally talented and isn't given the same treatment as those that she views as her equals in potential.
No, but she tries to blackmail people. She betrays her oaths. Like she is a means justifies the ends.
Ends justifies the means, you mean?
Yes, that's what I said. Yeah, very loyal to herself. Like that's, I like that a lot. Like Lanfear, and that's where I think like if she'd been around a little longer, I don't know. I think she might have been a Dark Friend.
And I think that if she did become a Dark Friend, it would have been for the exact same reasons as Lanfear, not because she's actually loyal to the Dark One as much as she sees it as a way to advance herself both personally and professionally.
Exactly. Yeah. No. If she could get a Black Ajah to agree to teach her, she would join in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
Even though she dies fighting them.
Yeah. And that's why I like to say that, like, she's not a bad person and she's not an evil person. She's just a very selfish person.
One may argue those are not necessarily different, but yes. And the Dark One does like his selfish chosen ones.
This is true.
We have Nyneave sits down with Janya and Delana to quote unquote take notes. We've mentioned that Delana, what do you think they're doing here? Like, they're just questioning her about Rand. Why is it together? Do you think Delana was like, hey, let's go question her? What, or do you think it was just they sat down and were like, you know what, instead of doing notes, we're going to use this time to ask her about Rand al'Thor?
Yeah, probably. I mean, they were probably both working on some sort of a project together, and that's why they needed notes taken. They needed, and accepted to do clerical work for them while they were working on whatever they were working on, and then they just decided, like, you know what, this is a great opportunity to back her into a corner and ask her questions. But it is weird, because they're different Ajas, which, I mean, we know that the Ajas work together anyways in a non-Elaida White Tower.
Right.
So, I mean, that's not necessarily a giveaway or anything, but they're different Ajas, and one of them is a dark friend and the other one is not, and they're very different personality types. And it is interesting that these two Aes Sedai are working together to this end, because I don't think we ever see them working together again.
No, as far as I can tell, they don't.
It did seem a little weird to me that Nyneave was being sent off to take notes for two separate Aes Sedai at the same exact time. Like, I couldn't imagine taking notes from two different professors at the same time.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm just trying to read about Janya and trying to figure out what she seems to be just very old.
How influential is he? Does she become a sitter?
She is a sitter in the hall, yes. And she was a sitter in the hall and in Salidar. So both.
I wonder how often her and Delana voted together. Not that I'm imagining that's going to be easy to find, but I hate this conclusion that they've drawn in her Wheel of Time wiki. Just being a sitter in the hall means that Janya is also a high-ranking sister and a strong channeler by Aes Sedai standards. Like, you don't have to be a strong channeler to be a sitter.
No, they do tend to be stronger, though.
Thus, she has the strength needed to use the traveling weaves to open gateways unaided. Like, it just seems like a lot of things were pieced together there. It's a very sumptuous statement in her wiki that it doesn't sit well with me.
The wiki often makes assertions necessarily without evidence.
I mean, it is confirmed by the Wheel of Time companion, where her strength level is described as a 17-5. I mean, she's not necessarily a weak sister, but just because you're a sitter doesn't innately mean that you're strong enough to travel.
Well, the wiki certainly pulls from the companion, so as long as the companion's their reference, they may be using an if-then statement in a way that you don't agree with, but the data is true. So, anyone have any ideas about why they're asking about Rand al'Thor? Like, what? I mean, we know Delana. I'm assuming Delana's doing it at the instruction of Halima because she's got a Forsaken in her head telling her what to do.
I think also just because they're both sitters in the hall and they're going to be expected to make decisions about the Dragon Reborn.
Sure. And that's true. They are meeting with the Red Tower, and so they're trying to decide, like, are we going to align ourselves with the Dragon Reborn, or are we going to, like, stand in opposition to the White Tower? What exactly decisions are we making?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest reasons that they're questioning. Like, they haven't started talking about the Black Tower yet. That's such a distant issue for them. Like, the Black Tower isn't even the Black Tower at this point in the story.
No, it's just like a rumor. Or the amnesty is something I think they've referred to. Right.
And, like, even in chapter 28, which is where I'm actually at in my reread right now of this book, Taim still calls it the school. He hasn't even started calling it the Black Tower yet. No, he calls it the school. He comes back to Rand and is like, you should come check out the school. It's so much different than it was the last time you were there. And he drops the name. I think he drops Narishma's name. And Rand is like, it must be ridiculously different because Narishma was never an Andoran name.
And that's because they name it the Black Tower themselves. He doesn't name it that. He names them the Ashaman.
Right.
They come up with it. He doesn't like the name the Black Tower, but it sticks.
Taim calls it the Black Tower because it felt right to him as a counterbalance to the White Tower. Also because he's a dark friend.
Oh, he was going to make a Black Tower as best he could, as black as possible.
Right.
As far as I can tell, they don't get any new information out of her. They just question her until her mouth is dry and she can't drink or can't talk. So she has to drink a sip of the tea, which is sweet as hell.
Which, yeah, it's like Janya poured half the honey pot into.
And Janya doesn't like sweetness. And I'm like, yeah, if that's the way you well, she sweetens her tea the way you do. And I'm like, no wonder she thinks it's gross.
You pick on me so much for my sweet tooth.
You like lots and lots of honey. That's all I'm saying.
If tea is made poorly, that's the only way to salvage it. But for the most part, if tea is brewed well, I actually really enjoy black tea.
You also criticized my Syrah. Was it my Malbec for being too dry? You're like, it's dry on the front, dry on the middle, and dry on the back. I'm like, yes, and that's what makes it delicious.
It had a very fun flavor profile that was just turned sour for me by the constant dryness of that wine.
I just love the way it makes my lips stick together.
Nope. If I feel like I have to drink water after it, it's either too dry or too sweet.
Yeah, we generally don't have any trouble drinking each other's alcohol because his stuff is too sweet for me and my stuff's still too dry for him. Not that I'm drinking any alcohol during quarantine. I don't know about anybody else. I know some people are drinking a ton more, but I've stopped completely drinking.
It's interesting to not open the fridge and see a six-pack. Or rather, to open the fridge and not see a six-pack. All the right words, I put them in the absolute wrong order.
Yeah, no, it's just I don't... First of all, going out to buy beer is something that I don't honestly want to do that often. And then I don't start with a drink with the people and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like the people who are drinking more right now are the people who tended to drink on their own rather than the people who are social drinkers. I feel like social drinkers are probably drinking less, more often than not. I definitely drank more when I was hanging out with friends in an environment that called for drinking. Like if we met up at a bar or a restaurant with good drinks or something. And the times that I drink now is normally when I'm hanging out with my D&D people.
For me, the most common times when I drink is when I'm podcasting, actually. Because that's when I'm hanging out with you guys and having a conversation. And I just haven't been going out. And, what was it, the other day? I got that nice bottle of wine, and it lasted me, 2-3 days? Yeah. And the only reason I wanted to finish it off is because I know wine doesn't last much longer than that once you open it. And it was good wine.
After about the third day, it's just all bad.
Yeah. Oxidation is bad for wine. But yeah, no, it's amazing. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to go out. I'm going to be a cheap date when COVID's over.
Take notes, people in Discord. Seth will be a cheap date. He will also be available. I'll make sure of it.
Hey, wait a minute. Does that mean you're going to keep me single for a long time? That's not fair.
I mean, during quarantine, yes, I'm definitely going to keep you single.
Damn it. Well, then I'm going to make sure you're single and never get lit. Oh, that's good.
You know what I did on my lunch break today, Seth?
What? Normally I'm nodding. Now I'm shaking my head. This is me shaking my head at you.
Nice.
Again, the not drinking thing makes it a lot easier to lose 10 pounds because you're not putting on,
a bunch of empty
an extra 500 to 1,000 calories in, liquid carbs. Two beers is they're 200, 250 calories each. So you drink two to 4 beers, or if I drink a 6-pack, that's my daily calories,
Yeah, for sure.
It's been a lot easier. And also I'm so sick of cooking for myself that I'm now eating a bowl of cereal all day and that's it.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. Obviously, you haven't seen me get up to cook anything recently either. I made that enchilada casserole in the crock pot the other day, but that's the most out of my way I've gone to do anything.
And that was delicious until I left it out overnight.
Yeah, it's super cheap.
And now it's been in the fridge for a week.
Yeah, I need to throw it out. There's not much of it left anyways, but
good. Good.
Yeah, no, it's a super easy recipe and a super cheap recipe too. Join the Blue Aja and I'll tell you all about it.
Yeah, should we talk about Nyneave and Elayne being stuck in a small box together for months at a time? Because that doesn't sound familiar at all at this point. I can't imagine why they would drive each other insane, right?
I mean, they've learned to work
Not
with
relatable.
each other well enough, though.
Sure.
They bicker.
Definitely.
They bicker, but they get along.
Yeah, no, I mean, you have to, or else you're going to kill each other, which they almost did. So they finally sneak up. They're trying. Let's go back to the book. The girls are trying to overhear this meeting, and they catch the very end of it, which is basically Tarna saying, that is the message you wish me to carry back, that you request more time to consider. What is there to consider? And that just seems to be apparently the hall's just stalling. And I think that's a combination of the Black Aja, Shiriam trying to make sure that nothing gets united. And of course they're stalling mostly to enact their plan with Egwene.
What Aja is left out of the Salidar 6?
Red?
No, besides the red.
So we got a blue with Shiriam, a blue with Anaya, a gray with Baonin, a white with Carlinia, a brown with Moravin, and a green with Myrell. But I don't see any yellow in that group.
A gray, a brown, a green, a white.
Yep.
So yeah, no yellow.
Yeah, they're too concerned with healing. But, healing the tower.
All the more reason for one of them to be in charge of the group that's trying to put the tower back together.
Right? Yeah, you'd think. I think they take their duties a little too literally and not figuratively enough. Sure. And so then they've discussed basically getting a hold of Egwene and making sure they do the right forms. So they have to summon her in the circle and do the whole official thing. So they're not just going to send her a letter, which means they're trying to get to her in the world of dreams so they can order her to return. And that's the next scene we see with her, right? Is her getting ordered basically back to...
No.
Well, the next time they meet in the dreams anyway.
The next time that Egwene officially enters the dream world, she is summoned.
Right.
But we see, before all of that happens, we see lots of scenes. We see the White Tower emissary get to Cairhien, and she meets up with Gawain and starts sitting on his knee at the inn. And
no, that is quite a bit of time.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on before she finally...
I wonder how much that's going on at the same time. Well, no, because if we have to wait for the Red Tower embassy to... Or they're the Red Tower embassy to Rand, not the one to Salidar.
Correct, yeah. So the White Tower emissary from Elaida gets to Cairhien, and Egwene is there talking to him, trying to get him riled up, so he is obstinate with them, and ends up having the opposite effect. And then he hides her behind a wall of invisibility.
That's right. And then she's summoned. Because, at that point, she's told by the Dream Walkers that she'll be allowed to enter not at the next meeting, which is happening, tomorrow, but the one after that, which is in, 3 days after. Gotcha. Yeah, so 3 days after.
Yeah, it's only a few more days from this point until Egwene gets summoned.
But a long time in the book.
Yeah. Several chapters. Yeah,
this is where we're starting to get into very compressed timelines where, 3 days is, 10 chapters from a couple of different viewpoints. So, yeah, definitely things are slowing way down. But that means things are getting way more detailed. Exciting. Either we bring her here and make sure she does as she should, or we leave everything to the Hall and hope they do not lead us all to disaster. That is Shiriam. And it's basically her looking for, either we bring Egwene here and manipulate her, or leave it to the Hall and hope they don't fuck it all up, which they will, because it's basically like Congress, and we've seen how effective Congress is. Baonin is hoping they wait as well, because she's hoping to reunite the tower. Not really sure what her motivation is there.
I think that Baonin might also be trying to allow Egwene to be pushed into power and then fail, which would force the Aes Sedai back to Elaida.
That's a good point.
And then it also gives a scapegoat. And I love how the Aes Sedai just constantly see Rand al'Thor as a threat to their sovereignty.
Well, because they don't control him. He's not taking orders from them.
Yes. But, he doesn't wish them malice.
No.
He just doesn't want to be bossed around.
Right.
But it's the fact that, they keep trying to boss him around, and they keep trying to manipulate him, and they can't just be straightforward and communicative with him, that he gets the way that he gets with them.
There's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy there, is that, they think he's going to be hostile and mean, so they treat him that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, that's how he responds. There's that sort of, well, if you're going to treat me like a child, I'm going to act like a child.
Right.
So Theodrin spots Nyneave listening, and she doesn't say anything. Any idea why? Not my circus, not my monkeys.
Not my circus, not my monkeys is one way to look at it. I think that Theodrin is just kind of amused by it. Just the type of person that Theodrin is, I kind of get this, of course, Nyneave getting in over her head again. It'll catch up to her. It's not my problem. I'm here to break her block, not bust her chops for eavesdropping at a window.
And don't forget, Theodrin isn't Aes Sedai yet.
She's just not accepted either.
She's not accepted anymore, but she's not been raised. She's that weird in-between spot. And until she gets raised by Egwene, she's still considered below Aes Sedai. And so
even afterwards, she's still considered less than.
Well, they all three of them, I don't know, whatever, 5 of them that are raised are definitely considered less than, because they haven't taken the oaths.
5 if you count Egwene.
Isn't Nicola?
No, Nicola's still a novice.
Okay.
It's Egwene gets raised to Amerlin, and then she raises Nyneave, Elayne, Faolain, and Theodrin to the Shawl by decree.
Oh, so I knew Faolain. I knew there was one more. I always get Faolain and Theodrin mixed up.
And Faolain chooses the blue, which I think the only reason she picked the blue is because she couldn't pick red. But then she ends up staying with blue after she tests.
Well, she's involved in causes, I guess. Causes of being a dick. Sorry, I don't like her at all.
No, nobody likes Faolain. And yeah. I think that most people expected her to pick the red Aja, but because the red Aja isn't an option in Salidar. Theodrin likes her, but I think that's more a bond forced on them by like shared circumstances, like having both been raised to that weird accepted, but that weird like not quite accepted, but not quite Aes Sedai stage, and then getting raised by decree. I think that they are just kind of buddies because they graduated at the same time, rather than because they're actually good friends.
Sure, I can buy that. I did want to say one thing about Nyneave, because I've harped on her a lot for her hypocriticalness, and often it's accusing other people of being bad while being bad herself. And I just wanted to point out an instance of hypocriticalness here where she was accusing herself of being a coward while being incredibly brave. And because she's scared and yet advancing on the window and stepping through the ward. Like, she knows that that's dangerous and she's going ahead and doing it anyway. And that's bravery. And because she's scared, she's talking about how much of a coward she is. And yet, if she was a coward, she would have fled. Instead, she stepped forward and listened, which makes her brave.
And I think that's a theme with all of the girls, but especially Nyneave in this situation. But they often confuse fear with cowardice, and bravery is action in the face of fear, whereas cowardice is inaction in the face of fear.
Right. And since they always take action, whether or not it's wise action, they do take action. They are certainly brave. And all of them are brave. And they see each other as brave, while at the same time not realizing the other people are just as scared as they are. It's the I wish I was as good with women as they were of the women. So I wish I was as brave as her. Which in a lot of ways, that's what guys are saying when they're saying, I wish I was as good with women as he is I wish I was brave as he is with women.
Yeah, I wish I was as bold or as smooth or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that we see that often because Nyneave makes a comment, I think somewhere in this book even, I remember reading it recently, like Nyneave makes a comment about Elayne's bravery and how dumb she sounds, talking about how much of a coward she is and wishing she was brave and whatever. And Nyneave's just like, she's one of the bravest people I know. I wish she would just suck it up already.
Right. Yeah, they all have that opinion of themselves. Although I think at some point Egwene gets over it when she becomes Amerlin's seat. She's sort of
when she comes into her power.
Yeah. She's like, I'm done with that. I'm awesome. Kneel. Or you will be knelt.
Yeah. I think I hate describing Egwene that way because I don't ever think that Egwene really gets full of herself so much as she comes into herself. And I think so many people in the fandom that have all this hate for Egwene see her as just like unforgivably and unacceptably arrogant, and I don't see her as arrogant. I see not towards the end. There are definitely some points, especially in the earlier books, where she's very arrogant. But I think once she actually comes into power and begins to become comfortable with her actual authority rather than presumed authority, she actually is a really grounded person.
Yeah, when she earns her authority.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to when she's just trying to boss around her peers.
Yes.
And that's different. And that's the process we see all these kids go through as they grow up. We see them, not necessarily treat each other well because they're trying to figure out how to be adults. And that's something that teenagers struggle with all the time. Matt kind of treats Rand like shit because he's trying to figure out how to deal with the fact that his best friend is, the chosen Dragon Reborn who's going to go insane and kill all his friends.
Savior/breaker of the world. Yeah. Yeah, I have strong opinions about the love for Matt. My opinions on the love for Matt are just as strong as my opinions on the hate for Egwene and Elayne.
Yeah, Matt, I can see where loving Matt would be annoying because he does kind of just get everything for free.
Which the same could be said about Elayne.
Yes.
Or not Elayne, Egwene.
The ward winked out, and Nyneave jumped. It was past time to be gone from here. Scrambling to her feet, she began dusting her knees vigorously as she stepped away from the wall. One step was all she took. She stopped, bent over with her hands frozen over the dirty spots on her dress, staring at Theodrin. The apple-cheeked Damani woman met her gaze, not saying a word. Hastily, Nyneave considered and rejected the fool claim that she had been searching for something she dropped. Instead, she straightened and walked slowly by the other woman as if there was nothing to explain. Theodrin fell in beside her silently, hands folded at her waist. Nyneave considered her options. She could hit Theodrin over the head and run. She could get back on her knees and plead. Both notions had a good deal of wrong with them, to her way of thinking, but she could not pull up anything in between. "Have you been keeping calm?" Theodrin asked, looking straight ahead. Nyneave gave a start. That had been the other woman's instruction to her after yesterday's attempt to break down her block. Keep calm, very calm. Think only quiet, composed thoughts. "Of course," she laughed weakly. "What could there be to upset me?" "That is good," Theodrin said serenely. "Today I mean to try something a little more direct." Nyneave glanced at her. No questions? No accusations? The way this day had been going, she could not believe she was getting off so lightly. Neither saw the woman watching them from a second-story window. And of course, we were trying to figure out who that woman is from the second-story window before recording started, and I think we came to the conclusion it was... Halima! Yeah, so she's just arrived with Delana, and this is the... we saw Arengar and Osengar resurrected, and so she is here to cause all sorts of trouble.
Yeah, I think this is Halima, Arengar, Agenor?
No.
Or Balthamel?
Yes.
Agenor was the geneticist.
Yes. And he's in the Black Tower, and he's ineffective, and as I can't remember the name of his Black Tower alias. Dashiva,
yes.
Thank you.
One of the Ashaman that Rand chooses. Yeah, I always just want Arengar to be Agenor, so that way the A's line up.
It's not, though.
I know. Yeah, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Fine, Jordan, make things difficult.
Well, it doesn't help that they're left and right hand, and we're introduced to both of them in the same scene, and they're killed in the same scene, and then you're like, wait, which one's which? Because you only saw them that once. Yeah, and then they come back as totally different people.
We definitely get more reference to Agenor because,
definitely.
He made all of the shadow spawn. But, we don't really get a lot of information about Balthamel.
No, just that he was a sexual predator.
Yeah, just total lecher.
Right, which is then translated over into Halima, and you can argue how effectively that is translated, but that's certainly something that is done for this chapter, or for that character.
All right, guys, thanks for hanging out.
All right, thanks so much. That was awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?